We're on YouTube, and it's connecting to LinkedIn. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just start the show. We were talking about AI, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I just have a million questions I'm going to throw at you. So
Great.
all right, here we go. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. This week on our panel, we have Steve Edwards.
Yo, 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 to imitate AJ. Coming at you from a cloudy but warming up Portland area.
I'm Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. And this week we're talking to Matthew Henage. Matthew, you live near me, as far as I remember. We were introduced by my neighbor, and we had a good talk about AI. And I thought, hey, let's have you on the show and dive into this stuff. So you want to let people know what else they ought to know about you, and then we can roll from there.
Sure. Yeah. It's great to be on the show. So my name is Matthew Henage. I'm full stack developer, professional the last 20 years. Been doing it since I was a kid, so about 30 years ago. Always loved jumping into new technologies, and so I was working on a project that I started working on called Wows.ai about 3 years ago, and and then ChatGPT 3.5 came out about 2 years ago, and it just blew my mind. Saw a lot of huge utility from it, and got super involved with starting using programming using AI. So um, yeah, I'm from Lehi, Utah. So uh, yeah, it's great to be on the show.
Yep.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, so when he says Lehigh, Utah, that's also where I'm at. I'm same town. So anyway, so yeah, so you were showing me when we talked before about your system. What is it? WAOS? I don't even know what that stands for.
Yeah, it stands for Web App Operating System.
Okay.
Um, it's a way of using low code tools to build web apps, and then you can create AI workflows that basically control the web app in real time.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of what's it called, Zapier, except
Hmm,
you put prompts in instead of connecting to APIs for different products.
that's a good way to explain it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess just to dive in, because I at all the coding meetups that I go to anymore, everybody's talking about AI. They're excited about it. They're excited about what you can do with it. A lot of people are, diving into different aspects, whether it's generating text or images or videos or anything like that. I'm a little curious to just, I guess, kind of get the state of the art as far as you see it, of AI and how people might or might not be using it.
Sure. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because AI is a concept that's been around for a very long time.
Hmm.
And kind of what a lot of people are now referring to with AI is more of like generative AI. So using different types of architectures like auto regression, which is kind of what LLMs use, like ChatGPT or Claude. And then you have other kind of generative AI like diffusion models, which you might see something like Midjourney type kind of use there, and other kinds like GANs and type.
Hmm.
So kind of those are kind of some of the more popular ones. And so it's kind of interesting because when I first started getting into AI with LLMs, with like ChatGPT 3.5, um, it's one of the things I kind of thought about using it for is kind of like a a universal API where you can ask it to do anything and then have it basically come up with the answer. Kind of find out pretty quickly that that's not really a general use case. It can't do everything. It has advantages and disadvantages. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people, there are a lot of businesses that are kind of just a wrapper over the top of something like OpenAI,
Hmm.
and so which a lot of times you can just use a chat like app and really get a lot of the the use out of it that way. Some of the advantages of some of those kind of applications are they put a lot of thought and effort into the prompt engineering. Um, that's basically a way to explain uh, to an AI like how it should behave, and what rules it should follow. And so that there's a lot of utility out of that. But I think one of the big things that we're seeing a lot of move towards is AI agentic workflows. And there's different
Hmm.
kind of names with that. You might hear like AI swarms, like agent swarms or agent teams. And where the huge benefit from that is instead of using like one agent, like if you have an AI agent, there's a lot of different definitions for that. But one way I like to look at it is a agent is something that you can give a prompt to and you can get some kind of expected response from. And so if you're using something like ChatGPT, you can give it like a task or ask it a question, and it'll give you a response. And that's like one agent, and it's more could be more general. An agent swarm or team or like a workflow is a way to be able to have multiple different agents work together to solve a problem or perform some kind of task. Um, and so there's a lot of advantage to that, just like having maybe one person in a for a company that has to wear all the different hats versus having a team of people working in the company to perform some kind of task. So you have different people that are specialized at different
Hmm.
kind of roles, and each one of them does really well in what they do, and it comes together as a collective to provide the most value. You can do the same thing with AI agent swarms or teams or workflows, whatever you want to call that. Um, an example of that would be a project I used with WOWs, created completely within WOWs, is something called Speak Magic, and you can check out the examples of that at speakmagic.ai. And the idea is you can give one prompt and then have an agent swarm of like 42 different agents that basically take a story input, like you just give an idea, maybe you have ideas for characters or something like that, and it'll create up to a 2-minute video of these different agents working together to create like a scene. And so
Hmm.
it'll take the story prompt, it turns that story prompt into scenes, it turns those scenes into scripts, it turns those scripts into shots, and then you have like different characters that are basically acting out the scene, and it animates the characters like speaking to each other, and it can add
Right.
like sound effects and music and different things like that to create it. So there's a lot of advantages of that, uh, and so that's kind of like where I see things are going, kind of the state of the art.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I talk to different people, and it seems like everybody's doing something different with AI. So you've got kind of like you were saying, where you've got people who are, um, they're trying to make a story, and then they're making it into a story with a video, right? Most of the people that I've been talking to and working with, they're using it kind of. You were talking about agentic AI and the kind of building out your team to do different things, and that's kind of where my interest has been. Except it's more of a chat agent and less of a voice or a video agent. And so yeah, you give it a prompt, and then you also give it a set of functions that allow it to do things, and then it can go off and it can do the things. But what I'm finding most people do with that is, like you said, they have a team of agents. And so you may have an agent that is kind of the coordinator or support agent,
Mhm.
and then it can go and talk to the scheduler agent to get stuff on the calendar, and go talk to the technical agent to get more specialized technical feedback, or it can go talk to another agent that has access to different other APIs to do other things. And so that's kind of the deal. And so then you get into using something like Model Fusion for JavaScript, or I've been doing a lot with Ray, RAIX, in Ruby to do a lot of this stuff. And you write a tool, and a tool is essentially that set of functions, and you make stuff run. And so yeah, one of the tools might be, here's the video generation API, and it also uses AI to do its work. And so anyway, it's really fascinating kind of see where it's all going. At the last code meetup I went to, um, one of the guys there had actually been using it to write fiction, and so he'd use it to flesh out parts of the story or actually write parts of the story. And he's like, yeah, sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really not. And
Yeah.
it's interesting just to see how far it goes. What I tend to find is that if you do a lot of people want like the one-off prompt where you just write the prompt and you immediately get back the feedback that you want. What I found is that in a lot of cases you have to refine it with the AI. So what you wind up doing is you wind up saying, and I forgot to tell you this, or I need this scheduled, every Thursday. And then it's okay. Well, when I said every Thursday, I actually meant, except holidays and this and that and the other. And, or if I'm trying to get it to write code, so one example of this, I was using, lately I've been playing with Grok, but this one was on Chat GPT. And I said, hey, I need an audio player for my website. By the way, if you go to topenddevs.com, if you go to javascriptjabber.com, and the player at the bottom of the page is the player that AI mostly wrote. And I said, hey, I need an audio player for the website. I need this, I need that, I need this, right? And so it's like, I want a volume, I want to be able to change the volume, and I want the progress bar to go, and I want it to, um, there's a state of the art thing for podcasts where you tell it to not load the audio until it's actually clicked. So until you hit play or download, right? It doesn't eager load it. And the reason is because the the metric du jour for a long time with podcasts is downloads. And so you can actually pad your numbers by not telling it to, or by forgetting to tell it not to download every time it loads the page, right? And so right, but anyway, so I told it, and then I actually asked it what other features should I put in, right? And so anyway, we're seeing this kind of thing with a lot of different people. So some people are willing to go in and use the web interface on something like this, or what is it, open web. There's a web interface that you can run on Olama on your own machine to do a lot of these things. And so anyway, there are a lot of options for this stuff, and some people have refined it so that it will automatically use tools to go and make web searches and stuff like that. Or if you use Grok it'll tell you that it's thinking, and you can see that it's loading in different pages, and you can ask it for its sources. But yeah, it's been fascinating to just see where all of this goes. And then of course there are the specialized uses like Cursor AI and things like that for programmers, or other AI systems for other folks. And so yeah, the sky's kind of the limit for it, I think.
Yeah, it's such a broad range of different things that AI can do. You're talking about using things like Cursor. There's also other tools that are more like coding agents. So like Claude Code. I don't know if you've seen Manus kind of hit
I haven't seen
a
that
week
one.
or two ago. That one's been pretty amazing on what it can accomplish. But just using, I typically, most of my coding I use is I just open up a chat and I kind of explain a specific feature that I want, and then kind of treat it like a junior dev in a way. I think that's kind of one of the best ways to treat it. Kind of give it all the different use cases, what is expected going into it, and what should be coming out of the code, and why. Um, and so, and then of course you need to check the code, make sure that it's going to do what it wants. It's kind of interesting because we'll see. I think we're going to see more and more where AI can do more and more coding. Some of these things like Cursor are getting better, but typically the larger your code base, more complicated it kind of runs out of context window, and
Right.
starts kind of not performing quite as well. And so usually smaller projects are really great, and that's changing though. So, which is been
Well,
a lot of fun.
It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast this morning and they were talking about the topic of vibe coding.
Mm.
which is the idea of
I
using
keep
stuff
hearing
like,
that.
yeah. And so it was Syntax FM. And so what they're the general definition is someone who wants some simple app for some business purpose, or the examples were given were like, I'm trying to build a little game with my kid and doing it the regular way takes forever and a day, and or a way to do a quick demo of something to see how something would look or thing like that. And then it's not something you're going to be using um, long term professionally, deploy it and reuse. It's sort of a one-off type of thing. And so, usually with this kind of stuff, the code quality, from what I've understood, is how do we say, less than desirable. But the idea is that you can spin up something really quick, whether it's just to see how something would look, or to give you an idea of how something could work, and then you could tweak it from there or do something from there. But yeah, like I said, vibe coding is apparently one of the new term all the cool kids are using.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the line is though between vibe coding and actually just having the AI help you, right?
Right.
Because yeah, at the end of the day, like in my example with the player, right? I wound up having to it probably 75% of the code that the AI wrote I used, but the rest of it I mean I had to use my own expertise to make it do what it do and look how I wanted it to. You're
Sure.
right, it didn't give me exactly what I wanted, and so yeah, I don't know.
So Matthew, let me
Yeah.
ask you this question. When it comes to this auto generation coding, my question that I've always had that I've never had answered, that because I've never looked into it, is what languages and tools are being used. I mean, how do you determine that? Like, my focus of development, I tend to focus with Laravel and Vue and Tailwind and Inertia and some other tools like that. And so if I'm going to tell AI to build me, some little to-do app, to beat that one to death, or even something more complex, do I say, okay, I want you to do it with this framework and these tools and this language, or do you just say, build me an app, and it builds one for you out of what it determines to be best? How does it determine that? I mean, what is the structure that is used to generate these apps that AI is building for you?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of different ways to look at this. One is, if you're a coder yourself, I mean, you're going to want to stick with the things that you know to some degree, so that uh, you can edit and kind of understand why things are going wrong when they do go wrong, so that you can fix things. And so, typically, a lot of things when it comes to programming with, like, using AI, like models and tools and things, there's a lot of things that are geared a little bit more towards Python. It's kind of the whole kind of uh, with things, and so you have a lot of tools and stuff that are kind of more geared towards Python. But if you're having it generate code, uh, typically, how LLMs work is you're pulling information from a whole bunch of data from, like, the internet, and so the more the more data there is for a particular technology, the more likely it can perform a bit better. And so things like having, like, JavaScript. One of the nice things, a lot of times, when I code and having, like, AI help out with the code, using something like ChatGPT's Artifact or Canvas, and being able to have it generate code, but it can actually render that code for you, which I don't think it can really render anything else besides really JavaScript right now. And so that's really nice to be able to use something like that in that kind of case. But when it comes to different technologies, I mean, it really comes down to, uh, I mean, I like sticking with the kind of the languages that I use: React, Node, on the back end. And so using kind of the technologies that you can help steer it in the right way or connect it to your existing app, I think, is kind of the way to go for kind of see right now. If you're going to go more obscure kind of languages or technologies, you're more likely to not get as much support from AI helping out. One way around that is getting the context for those technologies. Like, say if an LM just doesn't really have much knowledge base on that, going to, like, the documentation for that, and, like, giving that documentation to the relevant pieces of the documentation um, to AI to help you with that. So it's kind of a way to around that as well.
So one thing with that is because I haven't really run into that. Most of the languages I use are fairly mainstream. I think Steve's in the same boat with PHP and JavaScript. But if you were using an obscure language, so maybe Elixir, or I'm just trying to think like how far obscure can you get? Self? I don't know.
Elm.
Elm. There might or might not. I guess it probably depends. That's one other thing that I found is that some models do much better with certain languages than others. But do you run the risk of so just to give people a little bit of context, so there are different sets of data that your LLM works from. So there's the latent space, and that's everything that it got trained on, right? And you see them building these big data centers with all the GPUs, and they're trying to get as much data in as possible, right? So they come out with a new model, and generally what it means is that, hey, we've jammed more data into it. It's more training, and so you're going to get better answers from it. And then you've got the context, which is, hey, for this particular query or set of queries that I make to the LLM or prompts, a lot of times it's part of the prompt, but doesn't always have to be. Here's everything you need to know in order to give me a good answer, right? So you're counting on its ability to process plus whatever it's got in the latent space that it already knows, right? So it may already know stuff about programming and general programming practices in the latent space because it's already been trained there. But then here are the specifics of the language that I'm using, right? Or here are the functions that are available to me, and here's how they work, right? So maybe it's not the language, maybe it's an obscure library that it just doesn't know as much about. Do you run the risk though of making that or of going beyond what the context window will hold? Because the context window is essentially how much you can tell the LLM, right, when you ask the question. It's all the data it can hold. And so for the lay person, I'm not explaining it to Matthew. Matthew knows this stuff. But do you run the risk then of expanding beyond what the context will hold? Because different models will allow you to give them different amounts of data in your context.
Yeah, so a lot of models, when you go beyond the context window, then they just fail, and so it'll just give
Mm-hmm.
you an error, and that can be very annoying using
Yeah.
some different things. Uh, the other there's two other issues with main issues with larger contexts as well. One is the cost. So
Mm-hmm.
as
Yep.
your input context goes in, like what you're supplying to it, which could be like your whole code base, then the cost for each token generation, and it all goes up. And then the other problem too is as the context window starts filling up, the less likely it's going to be able to recall and to be able to perform as well. And so that's where, when you're making AI workflows, kind of one of the parts is like from the whole solid concept, you have the single responsibility. Um, and I kind of apply that within each agent within it. And the idea is each agent that you create needs to be specialized. And I like to keep the context window around 4,000 tokens, which is like basically like 4,000 words, but not quite. And it seems to perform best in recall as well as be able to follow instructions with having a
Mm-hmm.
smaller context. And so that's one of the reasons why I like using just like a traditional just chatbot and having it generate code, is because I can limit the context exactly what I want. And I kind of pull and say, okay, I need this new file that does this thing. These are the inputs coming in. These are the outputs going out. Maybe feed it like a documentation for something it'll be using, and trying to keep that as small as possible because it'll just perform better that way. So that's kind of how I see things.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting dilemma, but yeah, I like the approach that you're advocating, where you break it up and specialize it, because then nothing has to hold too much context, right? All your your different things have to know about the things the other ones do is how to tell the other one to do it, or how to get the data back once it's done. And so that keeps your context smaller.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. So one other thing that I'm curious about, because you're building a tool that allows people to build these workflows out. So what's that like, as far as, not necessarily doing the prompts or putting the prompts together? Maybe you are doing that as part of your tool. But what's it like building an AI tool for other people to use that allows them to build these workflows?
Yeah, within using WOWs, it's kind of interesting. So in the sense that it's a new paradigm of programming. So kind of kind of bringing what the value of working with AI and AI workflows. I think we kind of go back a little bit, kind of human evolution. So uh, I mean, we started with language, which was a way to be able to pass on like knowledge to other people, right? And then the concept of being able to having a written language where you're actually able to write down some knowledge that can be passed on, um, really changed the way we learned and grew. Then you had like the printing press that allows it to be distributed really quickly, and that really changed humanity in that kind of sense too. Uh, then kind of one of the next iterational steps I kind of see is just traditional programming, where where now like with written language was a way to pass on and to distribute knowledge. Programming allowed us to capture and to pass on intelligence, and so I could take that knowledge, I could solve a problem, create an algorithm, and then distribute that out through like a disk. Uh, Type of thing to other people, and now we have the internet to be able to pass that on. And that was a way to be able to create and to distribute intelligence in that kind of sense, that someone could actually just reuse that algorithm to get an answer, or solve a problem pretty quickly. I kind of look at working with AI workflows as kind of like another iteration where you're actually building and being able to distribute wisdom in a sense. So you can create these agents that can uh, take a problem and have that context and understand how to apply uh, different kind of intelligence to solve issues. And so one of the great things in that kind of sense is one of the things that AI is really good at is being able to understand like natural language and understand the intention of what someone is trying to accomplish, and be able to then create many different ways of like a response. So one could be natural language just coming back and like specifying exactly how that solution could be in natural language, or it could be calling a tool um, to perform some kind of task as well. So in working with AI workflows, the way I kind of look at it is almost like you're building like a team of people that would accomplish a task, and so you divide out the responsibilities between different agents that will accomplish the task. So a lot of times, like the first agent that you might make might be something called like an orchestration agent or a conductor agent, which basically will take um, will take the prompt from the end user and say, okay, what team of agents should solve this problem? So if it's just a question about the software that they're using, then you might just send it to this knowledge-based agent that basically can can give an answer really quickly. Or it might be like a task. So in the sense of Speak Magic AI, uh, you give like a story prompt, and then it says, okay, all right, this is the very first prompt, so we need to create a story, and we need to divide that up. So it sends it to this list of agents over here that then sequentially go through and work together to build a video, basically. And that's one of the kind of different paradigm shifts as well, as I think we'll see a lot more of, is even though a UI is very helpful, and I think we'll always have a UI for like websites and things like that, um, there's a new kind of way of input of natural language that we can start working with AI. So it's almost like having, instead of using just the software, like maybe like a SaaS product, it's almost like having an assistant that you can work with. So that helps onboard you with that, or can even perform tasks for you within the software. So you say, instead of like trying to figure out, okay, let's say if we have a CRM, instead of being able to figure out, okay, how do I add a new customer type of thing, and what's available here. With traditional kind of like a SaaS product, you have real estate that is limited. So, I mean, you don't want to stick 1,000 different buttons on one page and expect someone to figure out how to use all these different buttons to do different things, or forms and things like that. Uh, that would that's too much information for the end user. But the cool thing about working with something like a natural language is you could have thousands of different tools and tasks that it can perform for you.
Mm-hmm.
It can understand the whole website. It can navigate you to where you need to be. It can explain how to use it, or it can accomplish those tasks for you and fill in those forms for you. And it could, once you fill those forms or have those kind of filled out, it can look at those and say, hey, I see that the way you filled this out is this way, but here's some more context on tips and tricks to make this better, or maybe just improve it for them, and then ask them to confirm, hey, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So working with it's definitely, it's very different in the sense that with traditional programming, a lot of times we talk about like pure functions where this one input is always going to give you this output. That's kind of one of the differences with working with AI too. It's a little bit more of a black box where this input could be the answer coming out could be multiple different kind of outputs. So one of the things I like to do when making AI workflows too is anytime there's something that could be done with traditional programming, like say if it's parsing out information, it's doing math type of thing, whatever, it's typically you want to kind of steer away from AI. And so you want to parse the information out from the answers, um, and then have kind of traditional programming actually uh, figure out what the output should be, and then use AI usually where it performs best, basically. And so and because one of the things that you dealing with AI is hallucinations. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things with working with workflows as well, is dealing with hallucinations and understanding when it's important, when it's not. Like you said, you had a friend that using AI to write stories, helping out with that process. Like that's kind of an interesting use case, and something that kind of deal with SpeakMagick, is because there's not necessarily a right answer or wrong answer necessarily, but there could be a preferred answer or preferred response versus a non-preferred response. Um, and so it can be a little bit more difficult on judging what is good and what's not, except for having a human go in and basically say, hey, I like this and I didn't like this type of thing, and refining the prompts that you use with the agent. Um, versus something like where you might have a specific right or wrong answer, then it's a lot easier to improve the prompts, and then just doing a whole bunch of iterations and tests and say, okay, this is, exactly if this is a correct answer or correct response or incorrect response. This is kind of one of the ways working with it too that's a little different too.
So when you're writing these tools for other people, then are you doing some of that where you're actually trying to, like, beyond what they give you, you add other things to the prompt to get them better answers, or
Yeah,
you just
so
kind of let it ride?
yeah, and that's one of the things is trying to steer it down certain paths that will give you reliable outputs to
Mm-hmm.
what they're looking for. So uh, and so one of the ways, I mean, there's different kind of things to kind of look for in that. One is when you getting like a prompt, like one example with SpeakMagick is okay, we have it create like a story first, like a summary, and then we actually have it parse out, like, so we have, and then within the story we might add like some like H1 tags that basically break out the story and says, okay, we're on Act 1 or something like that. It actually chooses a story model first, and then it has these different steps within the story. And so we're having it kind of guiding it down a certain kind of framework. And then we split out that story by like having it add like H1s for the different sections, different steps of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have it turn that portion of the story into different scenes. Um, and then so like one of the things it'll do is like, okay, and one thing I found is I would have it to do, like, say if we're turning it into a scene, I was having it do too many different things at once. So I was saying, hey, I want you to write a scene for this portion of the story, and I want it to be in this very specific format that then I can then parse out to make shots from that scene. And so one of the issues I was running into is it was having a hard time doing both of those steps. And so what I ended up doing is I said, okay, well, an LLM is actually fairly good at making a scene, like a screenplay, like a script, basically, because it has a lot of that information how to do that. And so I broke that out and said, okay, do that first, and then I have it send its response of that script to the next AI agent that says, okay, now let's add the formatting on here, um, and gave it all the rules of how to add that formatting to that script for that scene, and then that allows it to then parse and say, okay, this is how we define all the different shots that make up that scene. And so then I have JavaScript basically go through and split all that into different pieces and into different shots. And then I can have the next AI agent basically uh, parse the shot out and figure out, okay, what do we need to do to create this shot?
Awesome. So are you using JSON mode? Because I know some of these allow you to send the data over as JSON as opposed to straight text or other formats. Most of the LLMs, I will say, are pretty good about pulling text apart and putting it back together and figuring out what you want. But the JSON just gives you more accuracy, is what I found.
No, I totally agree. So like with Speak Magic, I'd say about 80% to 90% of all the agents I use are actually using the tool use the JSON mode.
Mhm.
And that there's a lot of advantages for that. So if it's writing story, then I just typically I'll just have it just write the story using kind of just plain kind of text. It's usually markdown formatted coming out. And so, but with the JSON, there's one of the cool things that that one of the strategies I use with that is with the JSON mode, you can actually like say, okay, I want it's basically have a JSON object that has different properties that needs to fill in. And so one of the cool things about it is it actually has an order of how those things are, because LLMs are sequential, so they do token by token.
Mhm.
And so it'll the top, even though like maybe an object in JavaScript isn't necessarily has an order, when it's filling this out, it actually has an order. So one of the things I've done with it is have it actually think through step by step of how to approach a problem, and maybe several of these properties it's filling out it never really ends up using, but it's a way to force it to think like linearly in a certain way that prepares it to give accurate answers, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like a form of like the thinking model that you see things like O1 um, model that kind of does, but you're able to then specifically guide it through a whole step of like, okay, let's build our own context of like, and have it think through different steps by filling in these different properties, and then being able to use that context and its thinking to be able to force it to then give the answer that, or the properties that you're actually going to use for the next steps, or for the end user basically.
Yeah, makes sense. So one other thing that I'm looking at. So just give a little bit of context for people here. I have two things going that I'm wanting to put together. One of them is I would like to have some kind of AI help agent kind of thing on Top End Devs, right? So if people are looking to go through some of our courses or things like that, um, there's essentially an AI agent that can help you figure out what to learn next, or maybe next steps for your career or things like that. um and so I could see that as a kind of a coach, if nothing else. um and I'm trying to figure out how to manage the context, right? Because people may ask a lot of questions or give it a lot of information. The other thing I'm running into is, if somebody leaves and comes back, right, then do I summarize the previous context and hand it to a new query, or can I just pick up where I left off? So do you have any recommendations on something like that, where maybe it's not one continuous session?
Um, so maybe maybe kind of re-explain that question again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's say that it's an ongoing tool, right? So the other idea I have that I want to build out is essentially, I've hired virtual assistants in the past to help me do a lot of kind of routine things with the podcasts. And so with that one, I kind of see more of the team model, and I can just come in and, I can just use a tool for it to go look up the information about my podcast. And then, I can tell it to do tasks one off at a time. And so, for that one, I'm more thinking, okay, how do I just make sure that the workflow works? But for the other one, where I want it to remember things about
Mm,
the people who are coming and asking for help. And I want, if they show up and say, okay, I just got a job interview, how do I prepare for this? It's smart enough to say, okay, well, what can you tell me about the company? Maybe get a little more information, and then turn around and actually remember enough about them, right, to help them. Do I have to store that myself to get the continuity, or can I, is there some form of caching the context window that the different LLMs do? Because most of the time you're hitting these over APIs. And so
mm.
anyway, that's kind of what I'm
Okay.
wondering, is allowing people to pick up where they left off when they're using an agent or
Yeah.
using a
So
workflow.
when using all these different LLM models, every time you send a request to the API, you have to actually give it the full context of the history.
Okay.
And so that was one of the things that kind of hit me. I thought for some reason, I thought when I first got involved with it a couple of years ago, um, is that it would just remember your past conversations. Like maybe you get like a conversation ID or something like that, and it would handle all the state and the memory of past conversing with that like conversation ID or something like that. But it turns out like it's actually more stateless, and so
Hmm.
you have to send it all the information, which it has advantages and disadvantages. One, the disadvantage would be it'd be a lot simpler just to maybe have it
Right.
manage it, but then you have a whole bunch of control over what kind of context that you're giving to it. And so you need to keep track of that information. That could be, uh, I mean, typically would be like in a database or something like that. And
Hmm.
then you can pull. It's also important though too. We talked about context window, and different models have different sizes of context window. I mean, you're looking at like different ones. I mean, some could be like only 8,000 output tokens. Some of them have like 120 8,000 like OpenAI's, a lot of them 128 or 200,000 context
Yeah.
window. And so sometimes what you need to do is if you want kind of the more full context of things, once you start using more and more up, is to summarize that information or to pull out key pieces of information that are really important. Um, and that's one of the things we do, like Speak Magic, for instance,
Hmm.
is we have kind of in a sense like a JSON object that keeps all the important information, like what kind of style does the video need to be? Is it more animated? Is it live action? Uh,
Hmm.
like type of thing, because you want that consistency from shot to shot, from scene to scene for the video. Like who are the characters and like character profiles of each one. So we have very descriptive of a lot of different things of that character, and that way, when we're generating an image of that character, it will have all that context. It's like, okay, this character
Right.
has curly black hair or something like that, and different kind of things, so that when it generates the image before it turns into a video, it'll be correct. And we also don't want to overload the context as well. So it doesn't need. So it's basically when you're working with a call, you want to do kind of a need to know uh, like context, and so you want to be dynamically being able to decide on what context is important for that specific call. Is really important also. So
Yeah.
and you kind of have different types of memory as well. So you're going to have memory for what is the state important for this specific call at the moment. Um, there's going to be kind of memory where it has to do with the whole run of the workflow, especially when you have cycles of humans going through. So like you get a question, uh, or you give a prompt, you get a response, and then you're continuing that conversation. And so you kind of need more of a more global kind of memory that matters as well.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I guess my concern was if I'm gathering information, if I have to store information when people are asking more personal things like, should I quit my job, or should I, they tell it I'm not happy where I'm at, and so I'm looking for another place, or things like that. I mean, I think the expectation is that it's confidential, right? I mean, if I'm giving it a creative prompt and I'm having it create part of my story, maybe I don't feel as compromised by somebody seeing, oh, he generated a video with a girl with black curly hair and a villain creature thing that does, has certain powers or whatever my story's about, right? It's different than if it's oh, well, we didn't know that Chuck was not happy here and was going to start looking for another job, or you know asked how to answer questions about things that he's not proud of in his career past. And so keeping that confidential seems pretty important. So, but that's a common problem for a lot of other things. So you're telling me that I that's something that I have to figure out, because the LLM isn't going to keep track of it for me. One last question, because we're kind of getting toward the end of our scheduled time, is because I know a lot of people are interested in getting involved in AI and learning AI. And to be perfectly honest, I feel like if you're not if you're not getting a feel for how AI works and what it can do and how it can at least help you where you're at, let alone where it can help the users of your applications where they're at, then in a year or so you're going to be way behind. And so if people are sitting here, and maybe you have a different opinion on that, and you can say that in a minute, but at the end of the day, if somebody's going, I need to understand AI, what do I need to do in order to get there? Where do you recommend people start? And what are the kinds of things that they ought to be picking up in order to be successful with this?
Yeah, I think in some ways I would say kind of approach it like the same of like learning programming. So, I mean, there's so many different directions you can go with it, but it's usually best to pick out, like, if you want to learn more about something like a programming language, is to pick out like a simple small project and that you're interested in, or maybe that's what you want to provide, type of thing as of value, and then learn the parts of that to accomplish that kind of programming task. And so, I mean, one of the great resources for that is using like a AI chatbot to do the research for you and to answer the questions for you. Um, it's actually, I mean, it's a great way. I've been using it for. I've been learning Java recently, and it's a great way to. You could have it like quiz you on what you know, what you don't know, or answer the questions. It's like a fantastic tool to be able to learn new technologies and things. Um, but there are, I mean, there's different ways of kind of approaching it. And so you can, using JavaScript, you can go just plain vanilla node type of thing, setting you're accessing these different APIs. Work with maybe one API at first. A lot of them are fairly similar to each other when it comes to like LLMs. Um, and so there's different tools you can use if you want to go beyond kind of figuring out that kind of thing yourself, which you can have AI help you write things, different parts of creating these workflows and stuff. You can use tools though that get you a little further ahead. If you're using JavaScript, like something like LangChain.js will give you a bit of a framework of how to work with things. There are other tools out there, like if you're looking more for if you're more interested in just AI workflows, you can use tools like N8N, which allows you to like a visual kind of way of putting together these workflows. Wow's AI uh, uh, is a way to do the kind of same thing where you're just using low code tools. So you're building things out visually, and then you can use JavaScript expressions to basically to parse information, to decide what context to use in different places, and to kind of help control of how the workflow is ran. But there's, I mean, you can use things like Cursor, which would be more of like an assistant that helps you within like your IDE to be able to help you generate code quickly. That could help you in the process of doing things, or you could use like more of a coding agent like Claude Code or like Manus, which I think Manus has that's not necessarily public for everyone right now, as far as I know. But and that will help generate larger kind of projects from single prompts, so that you can do more kind of like the vibe coding, which was brought up earlier. So those are kind of some different tools that you could use. Another tool maybe to look at if you want to use a lot of different models would be something like OpenMCP, which is a JavaScript kind of implementation that allows you to help standardize using different models and different kind of tools that you could use. I mean, we have something kind of similar that we added a long time ago into WOWs that we have like 30, I think it's 33 different models that you can access, and they has a very similar architecture because you're just looking at bring a prompt in and then a response out basically, and then we handle all the API kind of stuff for you. So those are kind of different things I kind of would recommend for someone that's learning different tools and things that they can get involved with and use.
Yeah, one thing that I'll add to that is, and you've kind of alluded to it in the way that you told people to approach stuff, is before you're even writing code, you can just go in and go to like chatgpt.com or grok.com or Anthropic. I can't remember the URL to use Claude. But you just get in and just start asking it questions and kind of get used to how it works, because ultimately what you're going to be sending over is prompts that look a whole lot like your questions anyway, and so you can figure out the different tricks that work. And then from there, I also recommend that people go pick up a course or a book or something that does some explanation on prompt engineering. The reason is because the one piece is knowing how to access tools and access the AI and how to ask good questions. But the rest of it is just going to be down to your prompts and how you format them so that you're getting the best answers possible from your AI. So,
and there's a lot of iteration. So if something doesn't work with your prompt engineering, try tweaking things, pull out pronouns, like don't use this or that. Be very explicit on what you mean about things.
Yep.
Keep the context low. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Now, I don't think you've been on the show before, so let me just explain what they are real quick. It's just us shouting out about stuff we like. So, a lot of times people do TV shows or movies or technology tools or anything in between. We'll let Steve go first, and then I'll go, and then you can go last, and that way you can kind of get a feel for how we do it.
Yeah, Matthew, just one thing he did mention is that the high point of every episode of ours is my dad jokes. So, dad jokes of the week. And so, anyway, make sure, hopefully my sound effects are working properly. Okay, so as an example, having a conversation with my friend, and I said, I actually have a half brother. And he said, different mothers? I said, no, shark attack. Thank you. So last week was St. Patrick's Day. I think it was a week ago today. And I bought a diamond ring for my wife, but it turned out to be a fake. They gave me a sham rock. And then my dentist, who's actually a good friend of mine, I've known for a long time, he got this local award where he was voted the dentist of the year. He didn't get a trophy though; he just got a little plaque. Right. And then finally, question: in King Arthur's time, which of the knights of the Round Table collected taxes? Because you know they collected taxes. Surcharge. So those are the dad jokes of the week.
All right. Well, how do you follow that?
Very humbly, very humbly.
Right. So yeah, so I don't know if I've played any new board games lately. So I'm just gonna throw out something that I've picked in the past. This is something that we've played before, me and the guys. I did find out though that it has a different mode to it that you can play, so I'm gonna pick it again, even though I haven't played the campaign mode. The board game is called Heat. Pedal to the Metal. It's a racing game, so everyone's in race cars. You play cards in order to move forward. If you go around the turns too fast, then you take heat from your engine and put it into your deck. The heat cards don't do anything, and you have to do specific things to get rid of them. That'll often make you less efficient moving forward. And so you start figuring out how to get through as many turns as possible, as quickly as possible, so you can get to the straightaways and take off. The campaign mode is you play multiple races and you collect money, and then you can upgrade your car. Board Game Geek weights it at 2.19, which is pretty casual gamer-ish as far as that goes. It says ages 10 plus. I think somebody a little younger than that could play. The strategy is not terrible, and if you kind of help them with the mechanics, I think you could get like a 6 or 7-year-old to play, and that would be fine. I've played it with 4 players. It plays up to 6, and it takes about an hour to play. So anyway, a lot of fun. This is one of the favorites lately. In fact, on Board Game Geek, it actually is number 41 overall on the games. So yeah, really enjoying that. So I'm gonna pick that, and then lately I've been watching a couple of shows, and I think I've picked them over the last few weeks, but I don't remember, so I'm gonna pick them again. The first one is 1923, and it's a prequel to Yellowstone, and I'm really enjoying that.
Is that the one with Harrison Ford?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I've heard that him trying to swagger down the street like a cowboy is not the best picture, but
yeah, he's definitely old.
yeah, it's funny. He does a new commercial for, is it Jeep or Land Rover? And the very last thing he says is, yes, I'm doing an ad for them, even though my last name is Ford. Sort of funny, okay. I thought. That's just me.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm watching that. I'm also watching Reacher. I'm enjoying that. And then I'm about done with the book Rhythm of War, which is a Brandon Sanderson book. It's the 4th book in the Stormlight Archives. So every time he releases a new book, which takes like forever to listen to on Audible because it's, I mean, I've been listening to Rhythm of War, I think, for almost a month now. Just because I listen, I don't have a ton of time to listen, so I listen when I'm like trying to go to sleep or when I'm, out in the car or something. And I just haven't gotten there yet. So anyway, Rhythm of War I'm really enjoying as well. And then I think that's pretty much all I've got for picks this time. But Matthew, what are your picks?
Okay, so I love doing research on AI, so I'm always trying to keep up on the newest models. It seems like lately a lot of new audio, like text to speech audio models, been
Mhm.
coming out, which I've been waiting for. I had some ideas of how to kind of produce them myself, but now with these coming out, like I'm pretty excited to add that into Speak Magic. So one of them that kind of hit that was amazing. It's called Sesame, and it brought a lot of uh, has a lot of emotion and kind of context aware of how to provide like in real time like conversations. It just sounds a lot like a human. There's been a few others that have come out just recently, have been great too. One of them from OpenAI. If you go to openai.fm, it has a way to be able to control like like how the speech should be generated. So you can put emotion in it. You can give it different things like having do kind of accents or different things too. It's pretty incredible as well. So those are kind of some of the new AI models that have been pretty exciting coming out recently. So let's see. And then I brought it before, kind of looking more into OpenMCP, which seems like using JavaScript, a way to be able to connect to different models and different other kind of services as well, is pretty exciting. Let's see. I've watched some Reacher too, so I guess they have one more episode left on that this next week. That's been fun.
Yeah, it's definitely getting there where it's gonna wrap up. So
It sounds like it's a lot closer to like the series and like the movie, like the books, basically, than the movie, I guess. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, that's kind of it for me. But let's
yeah. I meant to throw out one AI pick and I forgot about it. And that is if you want to play with some of the large language models, especially around text. I've been using OpenRouter. I don't know if you've used them. You can also get some of them to run on your own machine if you get them off of Hugging Face. So those are the two resources that I'm going to recommend. One of OpenRouter, you can use their libraries to connect to them, and then they connect to all the other models. So you can try out the Llama 3 model, the OpenAI GPT models. You can try out Claude, and you can switch between them so you can see which ones work best without having to do a whole lot of extra work to program against each one. Um, and then Hugging Face, they have a whole bunch of other models, and you can run those all locally. And I think that's huggingface.co is where you get those. So
nice.
all right, Matt, if people want to find your stuff, where do they find you online?
Yeah, check out speakmagic.ai. You can see kind of we need to add some newer examples on there. Our quality's gone up, and with some of these new models that come out, they'll be even better. So you could check out Wows at wows.ai. And so kind of interesting. We're kind of looking at transition there. So I'm trying to decide on how to take things further with that. Um, Possibly maybe going the open source kind of route, or kind of make it more community driven. So if you're interested with that, you can send me a message at matthew@wows.ai. Yeah, that's kind of two kind of places for me.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. Until next time, folks. Max out.
Adios.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Hang on for a second while everybody's upload. It says everybody's